Hi everyone, my name is Dorina and I decided that I'm going to start this series and it's a cuppa of melanin. So I am going around talking to my friends and people who've inspired me over the years living in Finland. And I have my lovely friend Wambui Njuguna here, and she's a yogi. She's a teacher and she is one of the most brilliant writers that I've come across. On top of that, she just started this I don't know how do you pronounce it?
The massage?
The massage.
Chavuti Tirumal.
Chavuti Tirumal massage.
By foot press.
By foot press. So it's the massage of using your feet to, and it's really, it's relaxing, and I would highly recommend it if you're in Helsinki. You definitely need to go check out Wambui. And today, this talk has been inspired by just incidences that have happened here in Finland and in our lives. And life is about growing, life is about finding or aspiring to be the best of ourselves, and I feel that Wambui is the best person in this to be in this conversation, because she has evolved a lot since the first time that I met her. And
when was that?
We
was
actually
2010.
Yeah, we met in 2010, and actually
it's been a minute.
Yeah, the first time that I met Wambui, we actually
a talk. It was the talk I was giving at Arcadia Bookshop.
Yeah, and it was at their old location.
Yes.
So
yes, I remember that.
So then you were talking about breathing and meditation, and I remember there was the first time where I'd actually learned how to breathe. And usually the only thing, like when I start doing my breathing exercise, I always remember like breathe like a baby, you know, like, because you know when babies breathe, their stomach rises and it goes
relaxed.
When they're relaxed, when they breathe in, and then when they go out it goes down. And it's funny, as adults, when we're moving around, we forget to breathe. And Wambui is one of those people who's reminded me that I need to breathe, because there have been certain situations in our lives and in my life where I'm like, you know what, just breathe. And life is just one of those things where things just pile up on top of you, and sometimes you just need an outlet. And I've noticed that the superpower of surviving through things is learning how to breathe. Breathe through the panic, breathe through the stress, breathe through everything. And it actually is the most important skill people should learn, to be honest. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, so welcome, Wambui. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
Thanks so much for having me here.
Yeah, and she's my first guest in the cuppa of Melanin. Because some of you know that I've had a podcast, and I haven't been really diligent with that, because I felt like I really wanted you to see the people that I am talking about and the people that I'm with, and see their faces and experience it more in a visual perspective. And even if you're listening to this as well, because obviously I will take the audio from this, but I just want you guys to know that I've never really gone away. I've just been working on projects that would go deeper, and so that we can have deeper conversations than just, you know, the 30-minute podcast thing. You know,
you've been leveling up.
Yes, I have that too. So today, what I would like for Wambui what I'd like us to talk about is basically like, what's your journey been in this country that we live in?
In Finland, my journey. All right, where to start? I guess I'll start from the beginning. I moved to Helsinki, Finland. It was 2010, so I'm going on my 10-year mark very soon. The reason I came here is similar to what many who are not originally from here or didn't move here as a child. Or I met a Finnish man, and so I came to Finland because of that. And I've would say, now that it's been like a good long while, I would say like the first, let's say 4 years of being in Finland, I was all about being like a good immigrant. So what did that mean to me? Going to Finnish classes and really like starting to like, gotta get Finnish. And I was deeply immersed in learning the yoga. And my husband is also a yoga teacher, so I was learning it with him, assisting him, going on his workshops, and really just like practicing the yoga, waking up 6 days a week to practice in the morning. So I just was very much immersed in learning my craft, and being this like good immigrant, like just really like gotta get like, okay, this is the norms, just gotta follow the rules, let's just, and so I was like really trying hard to fit myself into the Finnish norms. So those were the first 4 years, and it taught me discipline, it taught me consistency, it taught me persistency, but I also was feeling extremely isolated and alienated from my community, right? And then I would say the other 4 to 5 years have been just being a mum. I have 2 small boys, they are 5 and 2, so then I was like just immersed in what it is to be a mother of babies, and going through that journey, which was also extremely difficult, being isolated from family and members of my community and culture. So I went through postnatal depression not once but twice. I went to therapy, and I sought also medical intervention to help with that, which really helped neutralize my brain chemistry. So that was a very, what's the word I want to say? Yeah, that was a process twice in and of itself. And now I feel my little one is 2, so I start to be a little bit more able to manage my autonomy and my agency a bit more. So this feels like kind of the 3rd chapter of my journey here in Finland.
And you spoke about being a good immigrant,
Mm-hmm.
and what do you feel are the dangers of the connotation of being a good immigrant?
Yeah, well, for me, it just felt like I was abandoning myself in terms of just trying to live up to expectations and operate in a system and a structure that really wasn't designed for me to flourish and thrive in all of what I am. So it felt like, welcome, but you gotta leave like part of yourself out the door, because that we don't really kind of know what to do with that. And so when we're operating in like, and I'm just a firm believer of just calling things as they are by the name. So when we're talking about white norms, when we're talking about living in white supremacy, which I very much believe we are, there are certain ways in which you as the other, you who is not the recognizable face of humanity, there are certain things you have to navigate or negotiate or compromise on in order to just somehow survive and somehow feel like you're getting ahead and making your way. And so being a good immigrant, it meant that I was very isolated and had a hard time meeting other people of color, namely because the yoga and the wellness space is so primarily white. And I'm definitely taking steps to address that now in this 3rd chapter of my life here. And there really is no such thing as being a good immigrant, because either you can do what you need to do to get the job and feel like you're making whiteness, like keeping the status quo going in order to just survive, and that's something I've done and we all have to somehow manage with, but at what expense, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, that's interesting that you say that, because my journey was a little bit different, because as you know, my mom was Finnish, and in Kenya, I used to go for classes once a week. But it was like I used to do it, but I never used to enjoy it.
To finish classes.
Finish classes, yeah. So when I got here, it was like I was already part of society, so I wasn't forced to go because my Finnish was fluent enough to communicate, but not fluent enough to get a job.
Got it.
So it's like it was good enough to a certain level, but then when I wanted to get as a qualified person to get into certain spaces, it wasn't good enough. And then also my name was foreign enough, so then like was foreign, like it was very foreign to the point where the only job, like when people used to discover that I was Kenyan, the only job I was offered was, oh, we have this person, the head of housekeeping, and they would be happy to have you there, or a receptionist or something. And this was a time when I sent my CV, and at that time I was studying for my master's degree. And I had a degree in international business. I still have it though, but in international business administration. So it was kind of like, I remember when I read that email, when I was sent back and that CC'd it to this person, I remember going to the bathroom because I was in some, it was this space where you get help in writing your CV, and I remember I'd worked so hard for my CVs, and I remember going to the bathroom and crying. And wondering like what my worth was, you know. And that's the thing that I feel like that I've talked with other black people here, is that they're so used to being put down in a certain level that they've accepted it,
internalized it.
They've accepted and they've internalized it. And for me, it was something that I wasn't willing to accept, because I was also tired of also getting jobs and then being told every day that I'm so lucky to be there, that there are other people who don't have
gratitude.
So you have to be in gratitude. And there was even one place where I was at where someone told me that, you know, they were disappointed, and I said, why? Because apparently they had hired me because they thought that since they'd been watching too many African American movies, and they thought that I was going to be loud and bring the spice into the office, and I was even more quiet than the Finns, that no one even knew if I was there.
It's so funny. I just read an article that says black women aren't allowed to be introverted, and how it was the same thing. It was in a job setting, and people were, one black woman who identified herself as an introvert, she was constantly told, you're so quiet, or this, that, and the other, and then it affected badly on her review, even though her work was fine, like she was doing the work, but it was just this projection of what a black woman is supposed to be, like bring it in and sass and all this kind of thing that it affected. So we're not allowed to have personalities that go beyond the tropes.
So then it was kind of difficult, because wherever I went, people, like, I wasn't what people were expecting, you know. And if I said something that was perceived as intelligent, it's like, oh, so you're smart, and it was like a shock to them. And thinking about how I grew up with surrounded by lawyers, engineers, electrical engineers who are African black doctors. I have doctors and dentists in my family. Some are oncologists, pediatricians, and engineers, and people who are like very highly educated and actually very good at their field. So for me, coming to a place where people expected me to be less than was not only shocking, but it was also from people who had lived in Kenya and were also used to having us as servants. So they were not able to relate to me in a way. They were not able to relate because they're used to seeing someone in that position of poverty, or as a like as a servant or something. So when I was in spaces, it was just automatically assumed that I would be in a certain way. And I remember once, to the point where people felt really open enough to ask me how much my salary was, to the point where they felt open when I was studying for my master's degree, asking how much it cost and if I could actually afford it, you know, to the point of where they felt comfortable. Like when my parent, like when I think if you all know me, then you know that my dad passed on and he had cancer, was terminally ill, that they felt comfortable enough to ask if my parents could afford the treatment.
Wow.
Yes. So, and the thing for me is and also having to be in spaces where I would go for dinners where they would discuss how there's poverty in Kenya, how, like, you know, the people that they'd helped and all these things. So to the point where they felt entitled for me to report back to them about my lives. And it came a point where I just wanted to tell them, look, I'm not your sponsor child. You just happen to know my mother in the capacity of her doing, like, working and doing things for you. But it was like, and so then I just had to take a step back because I realized that they would never see me as who I really am. And even if they would see my academic achievements or whatever, of how well I would navigate through that, it didn't matter. Because I remember even when I was coming to Finland to study, one of them suggested, and this is a person who has a PhD, that I should study nursing. And my mom was like, but Donna, that's not Donna's thing. You know, my nickname is Donna, and you heard Dorina in the beginning, but everyone, like, people who know me call me Donna. And that's reserved for very few people, to be honest.
I think I called you Donna.
Yeah,
sorry,
no,
I meant
it's
to
fine.
ask what you prefer.
No. But Donna is like for my close friends and people who were in my life. So then that was the thing. It's that we wanted to discuss the perception of how, I'm sure, like, when you're in your yoga spaces, do you feel that people treat you differently, or they somehow, or do they have expectations of who you should be?
That's a good question. It's nothing overt or explicit. But where I think it's what's changed is how I'm feeling in those spaces. Actually, it's more what's happening internally rather than, of course, it's the internal and the external are very much connected. But I guess I would say that when I came to Helsinki and I knew no one and found the culture really difficult and hard to, like, somehow get into and meet people, and like the place where I would go and felt safe and at home was in the yoga shala, doing my yoga practice. Like, I remember that was where I felt like this is where I'm getting my nourishment and sustenance and feeling whole and grounded and human again. So I remember that being a very powerful lived experience. I would say about a year ago, I've really started the process of decolonizing my own mind, of understanding my complicity in terms of upholding white supremacy based on my education and my background and my conditioning and internalized expectations of myself. So I've really, like, taken steps to deconstruct these ideas that came to me in the form of education, both in Kenya and in America. And so now how I'm feeling, and it's not exactly a very comfortable place to be right now, is the place that I came for my safety, for my refuge. It doesn't really feel so welcoming and inclusive as it once did. Namely that certainly in Finland, and I'll just go ahead and make an assumption here, like globally, yoga and Ashtanga yoga have a limited demographic, namely white upper middle class people are participating or are represented en masse, like who is doing yoga, right? So so about a year ago I was really beginning to open up to the question of, like, who is not here and why. And so that's currently, like, what I'm grappling with in the wellness spaces. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And is that what led you to study the Chibuti Tirumal?
The Shabuti Tirumal I studied actually back in 2013.
Yeah.
So that was just more as a way to build on my skills and learn how to kind of like, just to provide another healing modality that would complement and work well with the yoga work. So I say like yoga teaching, the massage, and I'm a huge meditation advocate. So I say like this is my three system offering in terms of providing wellness.
Okay.
And one thing going in the future is I wish to educate myself and speak much more explicitly about trauma, how trauma shows up, what are the different steps. Because I think in wellness spaces, like since of course like we collectively uphold white supremacy also in yoga and wellness spaces, and so one thing I know happens a lot is spiritual bypass.
Oh yeah.
Like okay, well forget all like that, and anyway it happened in history, so let's just like be love and light, and let's think about forgiveness and compassion, and let's just like fast forward through your pain, through your trauma, like okay, but and it's this entitlement of being comfortable, right? And so there's been a lot more talk and a lot more conversation being had around trauma, which I think is incredibly important. There's no way to rush people as they process their trauma and come to terms with the kind of society we live in. So I want to inform myself much more explicitly about trauma, and even using yoga as a way to heal through sexual violence. But that's going to take more education than the education I've had previously. So that's kind of one goal of mine going forward. And might I also add that it's not really so black and white. So there is trauma, and there is the very painful process of working through personal trauma and collective trauma that we have as POC.
Yeah.
Some similar, some different, but definitely like intersecting stories. And one element that I would say that is, because we are, as humans, we are so used to the negativity bias.
Oh yeah, true.
So trauma like kind of gets all the space and takes up all the...
Yeah.
It's all about trauma, as it should be, and I'm not like saying it shouldn't be there. And I just want to invite us not to forget that even as we work through the trauma and through the struggle, we still have immense capacity for joy and resilience, and tapping into that.
Yeah. Because
so it's not like once all my trauma is worked through, because I don't think there's ever really like an ending point. It's just you kind of reach gradual levels of making peace with your past.
Exactly.
We can still use joy and resilience to keep ourselves
sane. and the thing that I find really amazing is that we need to not only, like, yes, all of us have some form of trauma, but then try not to be in that loop of misery. Because when you're in that loop of misery, it's like, misery loves company, so then you also attract this, like, you have to be very conscious also of the communities and the spaces that you are in. Are they healing spaces? Do you leave happier or do you leave sadder? And that's how I measure my day. It's like, basically, how did I feel about that? Did I leave this person feeling happier? Was I angry or whatever? Or if I was angry, what did that person trigger in me, and what is this that I need to work on? So I feel like every day is a school for us of discovering not only discovering ourselves, but also discovering what stories we tell ourselves of others and who they are, and for me, like, how I even found yoga was, I'd always been interested in it. I remember my first session, and it was, of course, in a gym, and I think the instructor, because I remember there was one
here in Finland.
Yeah, in Finland, So there was an instructor there, and I didn't like that time I was just trying it out. I wasn't really like, like I was just like, okay, let me just try and see what it is. And I remember in one of the rooms there was this lady who had come with a, like it was in a gym, and then she had this white yoga, like she had the, you know, no, it wasn't a sari. What is that thing when they wear the pants and the?
Oh, the kurta.
Yeah, she had, it was white. She had the white pants and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and she had brought her own yoga mat. And I remember in my head, I was just thinking, in a gym, really? Like in my mind, I was just thinking, okay, that's like, I know this is my first yoga class, but come on, like no, like I just found her like really pretentious. But at the same time, now that I think about it, maybe she was just being herself. You know, that's how she felt comfortable doing yoga. And anyway, so we did it, and then I remember in the beginning I was so stressed to the point where like I was not. It took me a long time to get into it. And then I remember there was a time where I was just like thinking, and then I noticed the yoga instructor was looking at me. And I was like, can she sense that I like I was like, I must have been like I bet she was sensing it. But in the end, I remember when it was over and we were in the shavasana position, I fell asleep. I was so relaxed, and I was like, wow. I was like, and I felt like I was floating home after that. So then that's when I was like, that thing that I experienced in the end, I want more of that. And that was like how somehow, that's how I kind of found my journey towards yoga. And then the other thing that actually helped me was I met a common acquaintance of us, and she actually had trained with a physiotherapist in India. And that time I was suffering from, or still suffer from, sciatica.
Yeah.
So actually it was cauda. It's like this kind of condition anyway, but it's something to do with the nerves. So then she showed me which ones were good for that, and then that actually helped me stop taking painkillers. Like I stopped experiencing pain. So actually that's when I realized that yoga actually, because yoga came with meditation, it came with silence, it came with breathing, and through that I learned to be in the now. Because I was never a person who was present. I was always like the next thing, like doing the next thing, and that made me be still and be and like have this thing of not only observing things around me, but being aware of myself, my breathing. And that's when I was like, this yoga thing, you know, because like that's when I was like, this is what has been missing in my life. And no matter where I am, wherever in the world I am, I always find some time, even if it's just doing sun salutations or whatever, and it just somehow brings me back to me, you know. And I think especially, you know, in like living in a country like this, it's very important to be aware of self and not to pile on other people, because that's the thing. As humans, we've been kind of conditioned to carry other people's burdens. Like someone's problem is your problem and whatever. But then the thing is, like, how do you help others if your cup is full?
That's right.
So you must find how do you learn. So now I've learned. So the yoga and other methods have helped me function. Because sometimes I felt like I was barely functioning, like I was on autopilot, and now it's like I feel like I'm back to being manual, like back to being alive.
Well, it's great you could experience that in your first yoga class.
Yeah, falling asleep, that was
That's
like
amazing.
Wow. Yeah. So apart from yoga and how it's manifested in my life, what is your third phase going to be?
Third chapter.
What is it going to be like in Finland?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like to say that I'm working at the intersection of social inclusion and wellness, or among friends, decentering whiteness in wellness spaces. And more to the point, it's really centering Black, Indigenous, people of color, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, members of the Muslim religion, anyone who identifies as marginalized and oppressed and of being othered in any way, shape or form, really centering our lived experiences, prioritizing our need for wellness spaces, and really beginning to answer the question, who is not showing up in these spaces and why, and who gets to be well or why not, who gets to feel whole, who gets to be fully in their embodiment, and not always feeling under attack. So it's really shifting the narrative and creating safer spaces for us to be able to disarm ourselves and, you know, get to know one another without kind of like assumed solidarity and you know what I'm saying, because there's a lot of that going on. And also the fact that like sometimes when we are in POC or WOC only spaces, the relief of not being under the white gaze is so it's so tangible that we just kind of like, finally I can unload everything, not knowing that we're triggering and harming one another, either consciously or unconsciously. So it's really like trying to use the tools that I've been practicing these past 10-15 years as a way that we might shift the narrative of being able to address trauma, but in sort of more mindful, intelligent ways. Definitely with the joy aspect as really like, I would like the joy very much to be a part of the way we interact with one another, and the resilience. So we're not so much defining ourselves by our struggle, by our trauma, because we cannot rush anybody's experience. We cannot rush that, and rushing it and trying to sweep it away quickly to get to the good stuff, that's spiritual bypass, and that's definitely problematic. However, I feel that if we are always on the negativity bias of trauma is getting all the attention, it's taking up all the space in the conversation, that it then leaves very little room and energy to be like, let's talk about joy, let's talk about resilience, let's and how do we practice that, because we need to also a little bit get past the talk, or not even get past, but just in tandem with the talking and the deconstructing and the decolonization and understanding all this heady cognitive stuff. We definitely need somatic embodied practices that keep us well and keep us whole and keep us connected to one another. So how do we talk across lines of difference? You know, it's good to come to the communities, WOC only, black and brown women spaces, POC spaces, to kind of heal and disarm ourselves in a way that it's not possible in like mixed company and under the white gaze. But at some point, you know, we are still all interconnected, especially in a country like Finland that is so like white dominant, that we also, once we have resourced ourselves, we also need to then be able to go back out and show up in ways that we can be interconnected with one another. So we can't hide in our communities, like self-segregation. We're not going to be able to really learn and be able to unpack these tricky, nuanced situations.
And there was that thing that we were talking about. What is your form of self-care?
My form of self-care, well, yoga. And since having Sumo, my youngest one, I've started like a near daily meditation practice, just because I felt it was a bit more flexible, and I was able to do it anytime, anywhere. So I know for many people it's like, oh my goodness, but I'm already so busy, I'm already so overwhelmed. So then just like, oh my God, on top of that, I have to like start meditation or do this, that, and the other. So my form of self-care is really like being able to use whatever little resources I have anytime, anywhere I need it. And so one definition I have for self-care is the kind of inner relationship, inner dialogue I'm having with myself. So if I'm having a hard day, or if I've made a mistake, is it like I'm super harsh, I'm super critical, I start to be like, oh my God, you never get anything right, it's always this again, this shame, this like, you know, beating myself up. And then all of a sudden, like, how's that going to be? Like, am I going to then like be able to meet others with love and in forgiveness and in compassion if I'm so depleted and I've just like beat myself down so much. It's maybe I could do that for a bit, but it's not really very self-sustainable. So the meditation really helps me shift the stories I'm telling to myself about myself. So self-care is really a practice that can be done anytime, anywhere, even in the most busiest and hectic of days.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean the exchange of money.
No, those are treats. I love spas, I love bubble baths, champagne brunches, like getting your life like with all the treats. Those are treats and those are great. And sometimes we do like want to treat ourselves, but the type of self-care that I'm advocating for is much more fundamental to who we are as human beings. So you don't need money to practice and live in self-care and in self-love. So this is one thing I don't like, that it's been co-opted. Self-care this, self-care that, it's been co-opted. Obviously as a way to make money for this like market economy that we live in. And no. Treats, go ahead, treat yourself, but also practice that self-care that is free of any kind of like financial exchange in any way.
Yeah. And then the most important thing is like, even if we go through trauma, not to be in the loop of it as well.
Yeah, and this is why I'd like to learn more about trauma, so I can understand how it shows up both in myself and in others, and then that means holding others in compassion as well, and not turning away from, oh my God, suffering, overwhelmed, like, I don't want to go there because I'm already like dealing so much with my own stuff that like you're so, but definitely like this like loop of like really like strengthening the groove of the traumatic stories that we tell ourselves, based, I would imagine, things that have happened in our past, maybe also stuff that's ongoing now. How to break free and give yourself more options in terms of like, okay, I have like giving people the choice of like, whoa, okay, I noticed this story coming. Is there actually any like tangible danger around me? If there is, then hopefully being able to take XYZ steps to get out of that. If there isn't like any like real threat, it's a perceived threat based on past impressions. Now you have a choice how you're going to work with these very strong narratives that we tell ourselves.
When everyone is going through trauma, sometimes we tend to, when they say that misery loves company, so then we should also find a way to, like she said, find joy in certain things and create spaces and places for ourselves that actually spread that joy, that don't keep us feel triggered and re-traumatized all the time. Because my most important form of self-care is knowing how I feel in spaces and knowing when to leave and when and when to opt out of certain things that I don't feel comfortable with. For example, it may be taking a photo, or it may be just, and then there's also the danger of the word lazy. My self-care is on certain days when I don't want to be around anybody, I put my phone on flight mode or just switch it off and just chill. And daydreaming is actually an important tool for visualization, because I've noticed daydreaming actually brings out, it's a powerful tool because of visualization. And I remember when I was writing my books, I could picture holding my books in my hand, and that's what happened. So sometimes, remember when we're in school and we're shamed for daydreaming, it's not a bad thing. It really isn't, especially if you're dreaming of big things. But we also, instead of dreaming and talking, we also need to do action. And that is why we're all here, because of this action. So we need to show up as ourselves, and we don't have to always be 100% happy, smiling all the time. We also have to honor where we are.
And we also have to take our sisters along.
Yes.
So I always say self-care is community care, and getting a little bit out of this individualistic loop of like, if I have something, it's going to be at the expense of somebody else, or if somebody has something, it's going to be at the expense of me. So thinking that happiness and abundance are limited resources, it really keeps that competition going. And as we know, competition has a kind of a certain taste when we talk about competition amongst brown and black sisters, and we don't have to get into it now, but when we also talk about colorism and all the ways in which we've been conditioned to meet each other with suspicion and be a little bit divided. So just knowing that, like, bringing and sharing and collaborating, and it just multiplies. All the goodness and generosity and stuff just multiplies as we share and are meeting each other with wow, like let's lift a sister up.
I will ask Wambui to give us the honor of her self-care practice that she does.
I'd love to, yes.
And by the way, she has, what was that platform? Yoga Green Book?
I'm on Yoga Green Book.
Wambui is on Yoga Green Book, and if you're a person who works behind the desk, she has the best detoxifying way to stretch
your spine. It's
your
called
spine.
Desk Detox, I think.
Desk
Detox.
Desk Detox. And I actually tried it a lot when I was writing my books because I was getting really stiff, and it helped. So you should check it out as well. So Wambui is gonna do the honors and show us her self-care practice.
Yes. Self-care is a practice. Not to get perfect at it, but just practice for the sake of practice. Okay? So we're going to do this without a spirit of needing to get something.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is the practice that that's been giving me life lately. I really love it. It's called the practice of loving kindness. And if loving kindness sounds a little bit too sentimental and woo-woo for you, think of it as unconditional friendliness, a sense of meeting yourself with unconditional positive regard. Sometimes it helps, we were talking about visualization. You can think about yourself as a little baby, so kind of helpless and innocent and pure. You can think of yourself as an older person towards the end of life, also needing care and needing to be met with tenderness and kindness. You can think of a time in your life when you were feeling really insecure and really needed to be held in compassion. You could also just think of yourself as you are here and now today. And that's really just a way to a little bit turn off the thinking mind and get into the more soft, tender heart space that we really protect and hold, protect myself because I don't want to get hurt here. So let's do that. You can come to a comfortable seated position. You could even lie down if you want to just walk around slowly, just whatever makes you feel comfortable in your embodied experience here and now. Find your position. And before we go into the loving kindness, let's just do a little gentle breathing exercise here. So as I inhale, I'll say in. Exhale out. Inhale deep. Exhale slow. Inhale calm. Exhale ease. Inhale smile. Exhale release. And one more time. In. Out. Deep. Slow. Calm, ease, smile, release. And now if you wish, if your hands feel good where they are, keep them there. anytime you're feeling a bit anxious, if you put your hands to your chest, or even wrap your arms around your shoulders in this kind of self-hug, like really laying gentle, warm hands on yourself, it sends a very powerful message to your nervous system that you are safe, you are secure, you are at home in your body. So I'm going to go ahead and put hands on at the center of my chest, just to feel I'm generating a sense of security and safeness here within myself. And now you can silently repeat these phrases as I say them, or you can just listen. And think of these phrases, it's like you're giving gifts to yourself, so you're offering these gifts to yourself. So the first one could be something like, may I be happy and peaceful. May I be happy and peaceful. May I be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy in body, mind, and spirit. May I live with ease and be well. And even just saying the words happy, peaceful, healthy, free, this can be another option of your gift giving. May I be happy and peaceful. May I be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy in body, mind, and spirit. May I be well. So you can try doing this anywhere, in the grocery line and you're feeling super impatient and like at home with the kids and they're getting on your nerves, before a meeting at work, or even if you've been under attack, some kind of microaggression, even if you can just notice the space and the breath in those difficult situations. That's an opportunity to shift the narrative in that moment. May I be happy and peaceful. May I be safe and protected, free of inner and outer harm. May I be healthy in body, mind, and spirit. May I live with ease and be well. And as you are ready, you can, if your eyes have been closed, you can slowly open them. And so we always start this practice of loving kindness, giving it to ourselves first. It's like when in the aircraft they always say to put the oxygen, your own oxygen mask on first, because therefore you can help others if you yourself are resourced and well. So it's difficult to take care of people for long periods of time if you're depleted and drained and constantly like feeling empty and having a difficult inner experience. So always start with yourself first, and then this practice builds where you extend it to friends and loved ones, those who you have a nice, warm, good, close, intimate relationship with most of the time. Then you send it out to neutral people, then it goes out to difficult people, organizations, groups. That one is really hard to do, I'm not going to lie. And then it can go out to the whole world. And this really just, it's a very relational practice. So it's not just about me, myself, in my bubble of wellness and, oh well, too bad for the rest of you, but it's very much being interconnected and relational. So if you're well, I'm going to be well. If you're suffering, chances are I'm going to be suffering. It might be suffering in very different ways, but the essence is that suffering is there. If you're happy, chances are in some way, shape or form it's going to affect my happiness as well. So that's why we wish it for all sentient beings, not just humankind, but for all of us. So practice with yourself first, and you could even just work on yourself, and chances are it's going to ripple out in a positive way to those around you. So in that spirit, may all beings be seen, heard, and cared for. And as a result of the time we just took to get quiet and access our heart space, may the benefits of our practice today, may it make it so.
Oh wow, that was so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's like, there's nothing more I like than to share this practice, especially with my people, my community, my brothers and sisters. We deserve all the things, and we deserve all the things just because we are in a human body and we are alive, and that's it. That's all the criteria needed for self-worth and self-love and self-care. Are you alive? Yes. Are you breathing? Yes. Are you in a body? Yes. Okay, self-care, self-love is yours.
So basically, like, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on a cuppa of Melanin. And so I'll put Wambui's details. You'll find it, so subscribe, share, buy my books.
I'm so proud of you, by the way, Donna. She wrote not one but 2 volumes of poetry books. So go check her out, support her. Yeah, doing good things.
And if you can find it on Amazon, but if you find Amazon problematic, you can actually buy them directly from me, or they're actually available in Aldiburst as well. And if you want the PDF version, just go on to my website and you can get it as well. So support me directly or indirectly. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna.
It was so
thank
nice
you.
having you.
It was my pleasure.
So we wish you a great day, and remember to do better, be better, and feel better, but above all else, acknowledge where you are now. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Ciao.